Hi, welcome to another episode of Overcoming Grief with Theodorah. Today I'll be talking about how I benefited from the informal support systems I received as a child and later on as I progressed in life that helped me navigate all the challenges I was going through as a result of the grief that I was carrying along with me. I remember after the funeral and everything else to do with the burial and all, and then we went back home. I had so many questions, but there were no answers. Like, you could not get the questions because everything was quiet. No one talked about nothing. It was like that never died or something. It was a state whereby it was surreal because you somehow believe maybe he's not dead, maybe he will come back, because nothing was talked about my dad, or we never talked about his passing on. For me as a child, I kept waiting and hoping maybe would talk about him, maybe would go and visit his grave, maybe. But nothing happened, which left me with so many questions. Further in, I'll also talk about how to deal with I'll talk about children and grief and how a parent can navigate that, but that will be a story for another day. Back to today's. It was a confusing time for me, I keep saying that. But amidst all this confusion, I had such an amazing grandmother, Sophia Nyamwenge. May she rest in peace. She is and was an amazing part of my life. She was this angelic woman. She was strong in her faith, she was hardworking, she was kind, she was such a big giver. My grandmother impacted my life in a way that I cannot say it all. You know, my grandmother, we never talked about grief like directly about the loss of my dad, but what I remember her doing was she always prayed for me. And I believe it is her prayers that kept me through all these ups and downs and what of life. She taught me so many life skills. I learned how to smear the house with cow dung. Of course, those days I lived with my grandmother, and she was living in a grass-thatched house. I learned how to weave. I learned how to thresh millet, to grind with a grinding stone. So many things. Maybe in future I'll make just an episode to honor her. And she would praise me in this, like in the work that I would do, and I would do it so well. She would praise me, and her praises did something big in my life. I know these days we're in the era whereby, they say you don't seek praise from others or what, but for me that then helped me through my grief journey. The positive words she said about my work made me work better, and in one way or the other it would make me forget that I was even grieving, because I would strive to work so hard and do well in everything that I did. I spent a lot of time with my grandparents. I was either with my grandmother or my grandfather. Like, I spent a lot of time with them. So my grandmother would also tell me some stories about her life, about her childhood and all. So one day she told me, I lost my mother. There's a song we used to sing it together, but it's been so long. and I can't seem to remember it. I can't remember, but I can remember a few words in English. It talked about a bird that eats sorghum. It's the sorghum head, but it's not a bird. But it says that I wish my dad had died in place of my mom. I wouldn't have lived in your home. I wouldn't have gone through how bitter life is. Oh, how that is. Let me try to sing it. I don't remember if I can sing it, but I also have a little bit of a cold, so I beg to be excused. He says, sing like, hi, winyo, winyo maki winyo, kaya belly, something. Mabedi chango mama tho, mabedi chango baba tho, the wera mama, hi chandi, something like that. Like it was generally a sorrowful song. So she kept singing that song, and we kept singing it as sometimes we would do our work and something like that. And from that song, I think it subconsciously built me and made me grateful that I had my mother, because there is security in having a mother. And it gave me a beautiful outlook, or the beautiful way that I look at my mom, even as I was a child and up to now. I value my mother a lot. Like, I respect her. I look at her and I honor her and I say, no, this is mother. I don't know how I can say it, but she is an amazing woman. My mother. My mother and grandmother have been a very great part of my grief journey. My mother, in spite of all what she was going through, she never showed us that she was struggling, but I knew, now that I'm older, I realized that indeed she also went through so many things. She was always happy. She's this very happy person. She's always full of fun. Even when there is a very sorrowful moment or what, she finds ways of making things beautiful. And her kind of, she just has that beautiful energy around her. And that is how she raised us. In peace, in happiness. And we never had the chance to see her break down or do what. She was always strong for us. She worked extra hours. She worked very hard in very tough conditions to ensure that we were provided for, to ensure that we had health care, to ensure that we were safe, to ensure that we never lacked. Some of these relationships, we may have them and take them for granted. You may be buried so deep into the grief that you fail to realize the amazing people who are sacrificing to see that you have what you have, to see that they do not fall so that you fall, but they sacrifice their fall so that you can rise, so that you can keep going. My grandparents, then my mom, was such a great relationship, they gave me such a beautiful support in their different ways. They never talked about the grief, but they found things that made me feel safe, that made me feel I had a reason to go on. And I think maybe I struggled so much with the grief, maybe because my grandmother was out of the picture now. Maybe that's why, because together my mom and grandmother had built this very stable environment for us, for me, so that I would grow where I felt safe, with them around. And I think when my grandmother passed on, I got that imbalance because I loved her so much. And when I lost her again, now I had to deal with her loss and now the loss of my dad. Yeah, that is life. But she was a very big, actually I keep saying she is a great part of my life, because even now that she has passed on, she's taught me so many things I'm grateful about. So at every different stage of my life, God always puts someone to help me out. It's not like I don't know that I was looking out or what, but there was always someone at a different stage of my life to help me out. While I was at primary school, I always had people around who would provide lunch, because my home or where I was studying was quite a distance from where my grandma's place was. So there were people who would always provide lunch. At a certain level in time, there were people who supported in my education. So at different stages of my life, I had different people coming in to support me to support me. So it's also something that you can think about. And their support was very good, because I had friends who would give advice, not like advice really based on grief, nah, but they gave advice, they believed in me. Why I include this, it's because it's something that overshadowed the grief. It made the grief look irrelevant at the time. So it helped me thrive. It helped me start to develop purpose in my life, which is something that is really important in the grief journey, to have a purpose of your own. Yeah, that's why I include it as well. And then I also never had a good experience with some people who came in to help or came in the name of helping. You may experience it or you may not. There are certain people who may come into your life with a very kind, kind gestures, that maybe they would like to help or support in one way or the other, but in the end they could be coming with hidden motives. So it's good to be on the lookout, and as you're receiving help or support from anyone, it's good to feel safe, but it's also good to use your common sense. It's good not to let your guard down, because sometimes people will come and prey on your grief. They'll come and take advantage of your grief. They'll see that you're grieving and they use your grief as a point of revenge, because maybe your loved one hurt them in a way, so they come camouflaging as help, but in the name of settling a dispute they had with the dead. So you have to also be on the lookout for that. I remember there was, I don't know how, but there was an opportunity to get counseling for free. And I mustered up courage for over a period of a year or so to walk into this place and finally seek help. But it didn't go so well with me. It didn't go so well. As I got there, I shared my troubles, I shared my worries. Of course, this was the mentality I had, was like, when you go to the counselor, they are going to help provide solutions. That was the first one, but that was not the problem. So I went and I poured out my heart. I talked and talked. It was a long session. And then that was the first meeting. And then after that, they suggested they would include a third party to it. At that time, I was really, like, how can you say, you are vulnerable, you are afraid to say no or yes or something, you're just confused. But in the end, they involved a third party, which jeopardized everything for me. It made me more depressed. In other words, it worsened the whole situation, because I was seeking help for what I was going through, and I thought that was the safest place I would go to talk about my troubles, to talk about what I was experiencing, what I was going through. But including a third party to it caused a lot of problems for me. So after that, I never went back for counseling again. And I shut down every opportunity to ever go for counseling, because I went there knowing that I am coming here, I'm coming to you in confidence. I'm coming to you that you walk through this with me. But I encourage each one of us, if you can afford to go for therapy, please go for therapy. Don't give up on yourself like I did. If only I knew, I would have maybe looked for a better place to go, but I still didn't have money, or I did not know where to go. But you can look up for professional counselors or therapists to help you walk through your grief journey, so that it doesn't drag so long and you don't end up with certain experiences that can be avoided. So this is the part of how how I benefited from the various informal support systems. There are several of them, but for time purposes, I will leave that to that.